Who's Kelly?
Kelly is
Hi.
a friend of mine. I sent the link out to quite a few people.
Okay.
Did you see who joins and wants to
Yeah, it kicked me out.
hear?
That was the problem. That's what happened. Okay. All right. Hi, Kelly. Thank you for joining us.
I don't know, she's probably muted.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Okay, we ready?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another segment of Talking with Janice with me, your host, Janice McLean DeLoatch. And today I have the honor and pleasure of speaking with the fashion designer, Carlos Parmar. Hi, Carlos. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for asking me to come on.
I am glad that you could be here, and everybody listening and watching, thank you guys for tuning in. If you have some questions, please put them in the chat. If you have questions for Carlos or for me during this segment, I'd love to be able to get the answers from Carlos right while we're here today. So let's get started. So tell everybody a little bit about why you chose fashion designing as a career and a little bit about your backstory.
Wow. My father was in the military and we traveled a lot. By the time I was 11, I had either been to or through every state in the contiguous United States. We've also been overseas. And because we traveled a lot, we were always in the posture of learning. But one summer, we spent some time in Augusta, Georgia. And I started preschool there. This was right before I started school. My sister taught me how to write, or thought she was teaching me how to write. And I became interested in drawing. And then that interest in drawing turned into an interest in the human form. And that developed into clothing. By the time I was in the 7th grade, I got like a lot of, I was pretty much in 2 schools. I was going to Loyola, Blakefield, and I was going to Chinquapin. So I was going to 2 schools. I was going to school every day except Sundays and holidays.
These schools are schools in Maryland, correct?
Yes, all in Maryland. And later, later I got accepted into the Baltimore School for the Arts, and I am, that is where I ended up graduating, but I also went to Mergenthaler. I also went to,
okay. So you're
I pretty much was in 2 schools
right.
the whole time I was in,
okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about your time at the Baltimore School for the Arts in terms of how you came about fashion while you were there at the school.
Well, the Baltimore School for the Arts was developing when I went. It wasn't even in existence. The school had, this is when I was at Loyola Blakefield. I was at Loyola Blakefield and Chinquapin. I was in a program called the HAP program. Because I was very skilled in English, I learned how to read and write very, very early. I was in an accelerated English class always. Always like 2 or 3 grade levels above what I was supposed to be. So the goal was to send me to Loyola. Got an offer to go to or try out for the Baltimore School for the Arts because I also had an interest in drawing. That was something that I had always been doing since I was a kid. So I got into the Baltimore School for the Arts. I was the only student that had an interest in fashion design. Baltimore School for the Arts originally, the director was Carol Byard. She was the director of the arts program. It was Carol Byard and Stephen Kent. They were on the fence about keeping me because my interest was very solid in fashion. And this was, at an early age. I was maybe 12 or 13. But I knew I wanted to be a fashion designer. I actually first wanted to be an architect, but what ended up happening, Carol Byard gave me a semester to prove that I could stick and stay, meaning that I was not going to have any fashion classes. I was going to learn the basic standard classical arts training curriculum. And if I succeeded in that area, then they would create the following, my last semester of my junior year and my entire senior year would be devoted to doing fashion. They did not think that I was going to stick it out, as because a lot of people did not make it. And I ended up sticking it out, staying, learning everything that I could and applying it to fashion. And I did very well. And so I'm the very first student to actually go out and study fashion design as a career choice from the Baltimore School for the Arts. There were other students, I think there are like 3 that I know of myself, Michael Jones, who is a designer for Liz Claiborne, and Christian Siriano. So we're the 3 that people might be familiar with.
Okay. Wow. So you were one of the first there?
I am the first. I am the first. I'm in that group of being one of the first, but I am the very first. I'm from the graduating class of 1982. There were only 12 people in our class at that time.
Okay. And how was the Baltimore School for the Arts founded? You had given me a little history on that before.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting. Norman Ross had an after-school program, and you know, sometimes people just come in communication with one another and people talk about ideas, and then sometimes those ideas kind of end up changing hands. Yeah, and well, Norman Ross initially had the UB Blake Cultural Center, and that's where they had this after-school program for artists. And
all programs in Maryland, right?
Pardon me?
These are all programs in Maryland.
Yes, in Baltimore, Maryland. And so at the time, you know, I was partnered with someone that we had a store right next door. And by this time I had graduated, but that's how I discovered a little bit about the actual starting of the School for the Arts. I do think that there was a need in Baltimore at the time for some sort of program. So maybe that's just kind of where everyone was at the time, but the actual concept started with Norman Ross.
Okay. What do you love about being a fashion designer?
I like the idea about clothing. You know, the whole experience with me and clothing kind of was strange, and I will go into a little bit of detail, but I won't. I don't want to make this time morbid for anyone, but I do believe in talking about reality, and I do believe in not having secrets. But the entire time that I went to the School for the Arts, I was being molested, and it was frightening time for me. And kind of my escape was drawing. I really got into drawing during that time. I really got into clothing, and I internally, I did not really feel good about myself. I really couldn't talk to anybody about what was going on with me. The School for the Arts was really instrumental, and I would say that it saved my life, because there were some of the faculty that knew or had a sense that something was going on, and you know, they were just really there for me. And part of how I masked my pain was through dressing. I really became a stickler about presentation and how things looked and how I looked and how I presented. And that just fueled my interest in clothing, because what I noticed is that when I dressed differently or when I presented differently, I got different treatment. And so it just fueled it. Also, my parents, my mother, I grew up with all sisters, and I do have 2 brothers, but I grew up with my sisters. And my mom had 9 brothers and sisters, but most aunts. So I was the son and the nephew of a bunch of women that loved clothes, and they always came to me for fashion advice. I never got that. I didn't understand it, why my mother would wake me up and ask me how something looked. I never got it. And later on, I was like, oh, okay, maybe my mom saw something in me that, that I didn't. I was also that kid that got lost in clothing stores. I would wander off, and there was something so magical about fabric and the way fabric felt to me. The first time I got lost, I was 4 years old. I was in New York City, and I got lost in Macy's on 34th Street. Now, if you know Macy's on 34th Street, that's an enormous store. and that was the first time I got lost. There was an electricity that would come through me when I was in a fabric store, and just touching fabrics would just do something to me. And I still have that today. Like if I go into a fabric store and it doesn't excite me, I am uninspired. But when I go into certain fabric stores, I become just, I can't even explain it, but I have talked about it to other designers, and I have met other designers that feel that same electricity, that the fabric kind of tells them what it wants to do. It almost like it speaks to you.
You said something, we talked a little bit, and you said something to me that the fabric speaks to you. But before we go into that, let me just say, kudos to you for being open about discussing what you've gone through. I think a lot of those things were happening because people weren't speaking up. And even today,
oh yeah
it's
oh yeah and I committed, and I still to this day, I feel like maybe, like, a lot of times people feel that they want to be great and they want to do something for greatness, and I honestly feel that we are given gifts. And sometimes our gifts, see, first of all, we live in a society where we're not always truthful, or we like to hide stuff. And I come from an African-American Southern Baptist family, and you don't talk about certain things. And I get it, but it's not about sympathy for me. It's not about, I want someone to feel sorry for me. Right. It's about the fact that I know someone else is experiencing what I experienced, and my continuing my journey, because it hasn't been easy and it never is, but I do it because when I do what I do, it can inspire someone else, and they can see that, wow, if he can do it, I can do it. Right. And even with COVID, I have been able to do some amazing things with the help and support of people that love and respect what I do, but also just that determination. I share that story, and I share that little bit of information because it wasn't the first time it happened. I mean, my story and the tragedies that have happened, I share them because it lets people know, when people visit your Facebook page or your Instagram page and they see all this glamour and fun stuff, yeah, that goes on, but it's some other stuff that goes on too. Absolutely. And if you're a designer, yeah, you got to keep going regardless. Stuff is going to happen. Life stuff is going to happen. Right. Are you going to continue to rise to the occasion?
Yeah. And one thing about you, I never got that you were weak. I never get that you've been a victim or you want people to feel sorry for you. In fact, I find, we've crossed paths, every now and then. To me, you are exactly the opposite of that. You never come across as anybody who is weak or doesn't understand what they're doing. And we definitely are going to talk about what your thoughts are about people who say they are fashion designers. First, tell me about, we're going to talk about that, but tell me about your inspiration and how the clothes speak to you. Tell me about that saying.
Oh my God. Like I can go, and I a lot of times artists are like, oh, I'm feeling depressed. I have this block. I get them too. Right now being in Baltimore, because I'm in Baltimore now, it's a block. I get a block. I think everything that I was supposed to do here has been done. And I believe that what I'm supposed to do is go somewhere else and see a whole lot of growth is happening in Baltimore. That's exciting to me. But it's good for me to step away and come back and see Baltimore in a new light. I get very, very excited. I'll tell you a story. It was so funny. I just went to Paris in October, and my crew kept telling me to be careful because, like, I get inspired by, like, I was inspired by graffiti in Paris because it's like I know that graffiti is everywhere, and graffiti is one of my favorite mediums. I actually knew Keith Haring, loved what he did. I really was turned on by the whole.
Who is Keith Haring?
Keith Haring is an artist. He does the little dogs and the little silhouettes of people and babies when I was in New York, I would always see these little cute little doodles in the subway. And I was like, these are so cool. And they would be on the cement. And, and New York was in the 80s was really cool. That was a time Andy Warhol was still alive. Basquiat was still alive. It was just thriving with artists. And there was this person that was doing graffiti art in the subways. And we would sometimes see this guy. And he would be everywhere, and the art would be everywhere. Well, anyway, he blew up into this amazing artist, but he was really inspiring to me. So when I went to Paris, it was just interesting to see the graffiti that was happening in Paris, because it reminded me a little bit of Keith Haring. So, and it also inspired the following collection I did called La Ley de Graffiti.
Can I just pause you right there? Let me say, welcome to everybody who's here viewing this session tonight with It's Janice and my guest, who is fashion designer Carlos Palmer. Thank you guys for being here with me on a Saturday night. I know we have so many things we could be doing right now, right? No, but thank you for being here today. And shout out to Maryland, because there are some great things going on in the state of Maryland. And there are some people who should have a lot of great things going on. And so that's another conversation for us, Carlos, for another day. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's pick up where you left off.
So, the whole inspiration for me and how things inspire me, when I got to Paris, it was a whole different set of things that inspired me, and my clothing and every collection that I do is directly inspired by something or a topic. Right now, I'm doing a lot of stuff with ice cream, and the collection I do little micro collections, and one is called Neapolitan Balsazoku, which is inspired by the colors of ice cream. Like there's something about the pink, white, and pink, white, and brown combination that to me is so, I just like it. So I did a collection around that, and then I did a collection around Spumoni. But when I was in Paris, I started gathering a lot of inspiration for the next collection that I would do, and it was inspired by the graffiti that was in Paris. It's interesting, if you travel, the graffiti in each city is very different. Wow. Like New York graffiti is a little different from graffiti in Hawaii. Graffiti in Paris is different than graffiti in Italy, but it's all the same thing, but they're all very different. So, I was so inspired, but what happens is I like to take a lot of pictures. And the team that I went over, I guess they saw like what happens to me when I get excited by stimulus. And I ended up getting hit by a car. I saw, yeah. Okay. It's funny, and I can laugh about it now, but I was horrified because, first of all, I had a good friend of mine. I had her daughter with me. And second of all, everyone kept telling me to watch myself because I would dart out into certain areas to get pictures of stuff. And I was by myself. I saw fabric, and it was so much fabric, and it just excited me. And I was trying to get to the fabric, but before I stepped off the curb, I didn't see there was a person in the car, and the car hit me. And then I realized, oh my God, this 16-year-old girl is back there with somebody that I don't really, like her mom doesn't really know. She's a good friend of mine, but her mom didn't know. I don't have Wi-Fi on my phone, and my phone was almost out of battery. So I was
horrified. To do this, if you don't mind, but I want to wrap that part up because I want to get to something else real quick.
Okay. Oh, so yeah, that was it. That's just how like fabric inspires me. I get really excited with fabrics, but I gather information. I gather and become inspired by a number of sources. What really inspired me in Hawaii were plants. I did a whole collection called Mokuzai, which was, it's Japanese for wood, but the colors and the textures were inspired by leaves and the different types of wood.
Okay, let me ask you, what do you feel are some successful traits that a fashion designer, not somebody who just puts their name on a label and say, hey,
Mhm.
I made this. What do you think they should have?
It is very important for a fashion designer, even if you do not sew, because all designers don't sew. I happen to know how to sew. I happen to know and understand pattern cutting and grading. Understanding the language of the industry is important. Understanding textiles is important. Understanding how you are going to make money off of a garment and what makes a garment valuable. I believe that a lot of people are very uneducated about fashion and what it takes. I mean, because most people right now are used to what's called fast fashion. They're used to going to Target, they used to going to Walmart, and they think that's fashion. That is not fashion, that is apparel. When you're talking about, and when I talk about apparel, I'm talking about basic stuff to throw on to go out into the world. When you talk about fashion, you're talking about higher end clothing, you're talking about workmanship, you're talking about unique fabrics, you're also talking about less. So in other words, if a person makes a pattern for a shirt, and that very first shirt that they make at Target that you might get, that very first pattern may cost $500 to make. The value comes in when there's less of something. So if a person makes a pattern and they make a shirt at Target and it costs $500, what happens is the way that Target gets their prices so cheap is the production of many. So the volume is where you're able to get the price down. But if there are few of something, the price is going to be high. Also, the price is going to be it's going to be determined by how much of an item there is. So, for instance, 1,000 of something is not a lot. That's actually sometimes that's just a sample run for a large manufacturer. You're talking about in the millions, and in this country, we happen to make millions and millions, just like when you buy t-shirts. When you buy 2 dozen, it costs less than if you buy a dozen. So that's what a lot of people don't understand. So if you're getting an independent designer to just make you one outfit and you want to charge them you want to pay $120 for it, like it's an insult,
120,
because it's
120.
$120.
Oh, 100.
$120.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not really paying them what they're worth. You know, in order to cut a pattern that time, all of that stuff it costs money and it costs time, and you're paying for a person's skill. I happen to be a very fast sewer. I've had people, as a matter of fact, I just worked with as a young lady, Stephanie Guron, who she just got an award from the Puffin Foundation, and she was doing this piece. It was an installation piece, but she does like a dance within it. She does like sculpture or whatever. And she contacted me, and she wanted to do something for a presentation. And I was like, I liked what she was doing. I liked her work. And I always am interested in collaborating in areas that are out of my realm. Like, who wouldn't want to do clothing inside of a sculpture? Like, I am an artist by nature. So I worked with her on that. And she was surprised at how quickly a turnaround I had. But I did it, number one, because I appreciate and I love supporting other artists. But it was another layer to what I do. I think it's always important to not just do fashion, but you have to turn your fashion into art, because I'm an advocate for that.
No, actually, I was going to ask you, there are 2 things that I wanted to ask you, and then I'm going to open the floor up real quick. We have about 15 minutes left in this session for anybody listening. If you have any questions for Carlos or myself, Black designers and white designers, we know that they're not treated equally.
No.
If you could fix one barrier that African American fashion designers have, what would it be?
One barrier, first of all, like the funding that African American designers get is a lot less. I think it was so sad that designers like Willie Smith, designers like Stephen Burrows, who is still alive, and thank God, they're amazing and they've done groundbreaking stuff. And we don't hear about them as much as we should. Yeah, we hear about them, but not as much as we should. Stephen Burrows is probably one of the most important designers in our decade. B. Michaels, very important designers, and people don't know about them. And I'm hoping that people will look them up and see what they do.
I am certainly going to do that as soon as I get a minute. So funding, anything else that you can think of now? Give me a second. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. There is Christian Siriano. Getting all these accolades. He's from Maryland, and I'm very proud of that. But like you say, I know probably 4 or 5 Black fashion designers in the state of Maryland. Some of them had started before he did. And
well, I'm one of them. I'm one of them. I went to the School for the Arts. I'm the first graduate. You don't hear about me, but you hear about Christian Siriano, more so not because of his skin color. You hear about him. First of all, the boy is talented.
Yeah.
I don't take that away from him. He is talented. When I was auditioning for Project Runway, Christian was coming in, I was leaving, and we walked right past each other, and I said, that kid won. It's something about like a talented person. I know a talented person when I see one. The platform that he had, it was the right place and the right time. I think it was less about color. But what is a little disturbing is that a designer like myself, given we went to the same school, we're attracted to, we want the biggest, the best, the brightest, the loudest, or whatever. And Project Runway was hot at the time. He was right moment for him or whatever. But the school where I went, I think when the history comes down and people talk about it, people will not remember me, but they will remember him. And the other piece is Michael Jones, long before anything. I mean, Michael Jones had been quietly, but Michael Jones was always a quiet guy, but he'd been doing amazing things for Liz Claiborne. And you don't hear about him. Everyone is not supposed to be a star.
Right.
Sometimes our greatness comes through other people. Had I not have stuck and stayed at the Baltimore School for the Arts and did what I did, because it was hard. You know, like I said, I was being sexually assaulted every day trying to figure out how was I going to go to school without being touched, but I stuck and I stayed. And I proved.
I asked you, but I probably should know. Was this at the school or prior to getting to the school?
Oh God, after school.
Okay, never mind.
The person could get to me, and I had to figure how was I going to get to school, because I fell in love with the school, and I was like, how am I going to get to school without this guy touching me? And no one knew, and I was afraid to tell my parents. He was threatening. Just, you know, it was an ugly time. And God rest his soul, that the person lived on my street, and he's actually no longer with us. I'll just say that he was a dangerous person, and he had been watching me since I was 11. Yeah, and so that for me was scary, but my love for art and what I was getting out of the school kept me going. So that's the kind of determination you need, you know, in this business.
Okay.
Things are going to happen. Bad things are going to happen.
So we said one barrier that you would like to eliminate would be funding, access to capital, which is a problem. So let me just explain to everybody. I do shows that primarily are about small business and entrepreneurship, and wanted to talk with my friend, fashion designer Carlos Palmer here today about the fashion industry and what we can help. How can we help it? How can we continue to grow? Who's in the industry? And all the people who are unsung that people don't know about. And I feel like Carlos is one of those people. So we're having this conversation today. Now, I felt like personally, Black people have to stop waiting on other people to save us. With all the technology that we have right now.
Oh, yeah.
Create your own Project Runway and make it just for Black people. Sorry, but there it is.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not going to do it. I'm too busy.
Exactly.
That's for anybody else. And then two, we have all kinds of millionaires who are Black, who wear our fashion and buy everybody else's stuff. We need to start pitching to them. Hey, why don't I create this line? If you back me, we partner together. you know, we can change this. That's the whole point why we're having this conversation today. I absolutely love you. I thank you for being here. Tell me now, if you could dress one person or style one person right now, who would that be for you? And then
I am absolutely angry that Michelle Obama is not the first lady anymore because I wanted her so bad. Oh my God, Michelle Obama! I was just.
she's still wearing
I
clothes
love
and she
her.
likes designers.
I know she still wears clothes, but I wanted her when she was the first lady. I still, Michelle Obama would be one of those people. Um, Michelle Obama. I would love to do. I mean, and I've done some celebrities, but Michelle Obama, Michelle Obama and Beyonce, of course.
Oh,
I would love to
yeah,
do
everybody
something
wants
for.
to do Beyonce. We need somebody new. I love you, B. I don't want the Beehive to come for me, no, but
And
you know,
Jennifer Lopez. I also like Viola Davis.
yeah, okay.
Viola Davis. And I'm so sad that Cicely Tyson is no longer with us because she would have been one of those people that I would have loved to have dressed.
So now let me open up the floor for anybody. Does anybody have any questions that you want to put in the chat? Any questions, anybody? What recommendations would you give to design students who want to be successful in the fashion industry? And this is a question from Kelly Crawford.
I'm going to say it because I don't know how to, I'm not a delicate talking person. So I'm going to be straight up. Prince Charming is not coming. So stop waiting for him. And what I mean by that is don't wait for things to happen for you. As a designer, I always have to be thinking of, because I'm independent, I don't have anybody backing me. You better know how to do everything yourself and be able to, if you got to clean a toilet, you better be able to clean that toilet. And you also have to be able to give an interview. I am the simplest person, but use your social media, use your, if you're shy, shy don't get you fed. So you have to come out of all that stuff. Upon doing what I wanted to do, I just thought I'd make clothes and that was it. But there's a whole lot of other stuff that comes with it. So you have to be able to rise to the occasion. You have to be a creative person. You have to be a business person. And you have to never be fearful of asking, because if you're good at this, everything that you need is going to come to you. Stop wasting your energy on worrying about people stealing your ideas. Stop putting your energy into all of the minutia that makes us crazy, and just get out there and do good work. And when people copy what you do, that is a sign that you're doing something right. And then you go left. You do the next thing and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And, find ways to do it. Right now, the internet has helped me in so many ways. It's unbelievable. I wish I had it in 1988. I swear to God. I wish I had the internet and Zoom and all that. I wish I had it then.
Okay. And then iPhone raised their hand, but they didn't put a question in the chat. So I'm not really sure what their question was. Please type it in the chat and we'd be sure to cover it. We've got about 5 more minutes. And before we do that, I just want to say, shout out to me. I put on my best fur today because I knew I thought I'd try to do something fashiony for you today.
Thank you. Are you being eco-friendly with your materials? Because now some of the furs are so amazing and they're synthetic. And then you got great fabrics. Like I used to love leather. Now I love PVC. There's mushroom leather. There's cactus leather. I'm all about finding amazing fabrics outside of what we normally use.
Well, let me talk about some fun things. What is your
Okay.
favorite time of year?
My favorite time of the year is fall and spring. Fall because it's when you start, it's not too cold and you can wear cool coats and stuff and wraps and layers. And the spring because you're wearing very little. So spring and fall are my favorite times.
Okay, and then I do have the question here. I'm going to go back to this real quick. So number 2, are you a sunglasses or hat guy?
Sunglasses, Versace.
Versace. All right, good. Here's my next question. Can you tell me which person served in the Army who is a fashion designer, served in the military in the branch of Army?
I think it's Ralph Lauren.
Tommy Hilfiger.
Am I wrong?
Tommy Hilfiger.
Oh, Tommy Hilfiger.
Who knew?
Yeah,
Right?
I knew it was one of them. I knew it was one of them had a military background. Ralph Lauren, because Ralph Lauren
Actually, he
he had
does
a
have
different
some too. Yes, he does.
yeah, he had a different background, and Ralph Lauren didn't know how to sew. As a matter of fact, there's another interesting fact people don't know. My design teacher is the same person. He taught myself and he taught Calvin Klein. So Calvin Klein and I had the same teacher. Calvin Klein was not really a sewer,
Okay.
but he was good at design. And Calvin Klein he's a lot more amazing than we give him credit for.
All right.
He's a lot more amazing than we get him credit for.
And then real quick, how can designers, this is a question, I think from Kelly, how can designers connect with investors and what resources are available?
Well, I have worked my entire time just hand to mouth as an artist, but I've had people that have contributed. There are people that have stood by me and helped, not in a business sense, but money that would come to help give me a push. Actually, one of the very first fashion shows I did at the Baltimore Museum of Art, and she told me this woman is no longer with us, so I think I'm not going to mention her name, but her family was a very prominent family here, and she always told me to keep it a secret, but she started me out with my first push, and she introduced me to someone who became a mentor. Her name is Vicky Sobel.
And we've got one more question real quick before we wrap up. How can people follow up with you, support you, contribute? Real quick, I want to get to this one last question.
Instagram, I'm on Instagram at Palmer Carlos, PalmerCarlous. I can also be contacted via Facebook, Carlous, Palmer, and I have several pages, but what you'll notice is the picture of me and Tim Gunn from Project Runway, and that's kind of how you can find me and inbox me.
Okay. All right. And then lastly, I just want to thank you all for tuning in. Carlos, I love you. I appreciate you. I adore you. Thank you for being there and speaking your truth and talking with me, Janice McLean DeLoatch, on It's Janice and Talking with Janice. And on the way out, let me just say real quick, please tell Carlos thank you for his awesome contribution, and thank him for my lovely hooded sweatshirt dress, because people are loving the color, and that is from iPhone. I don't know what that is.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's from that's from a recent collection. So a lot of people have been loving the color. COVID has really brought out like my colorful side. And so I've been doing a lot of stuff in color, and people have really been interested in what I'm doing.
Eve,
so I'm excited about that.
Eve,
Eve. Hi, Eve. How are you?
All right, guys, we have to go. It's been fun. We have to get back and do this again. And we're going to rebroadcast this. You'll see it on It's Janice on Facebook.